Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Diane Matthew Brown. I'm a Health and Safety Specialist in Department of Research and Collective Bargaining Services, and this webinar is being presented to you through the AFSCME Training and Education Institute. So we have a couple of disclaimers that I have to go through. First of all, this material is produced through the Susan Harwood Grant, number SH-276355, through the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, U.S. Department of Labor. It does not necessarily reflect the reviews of policies of the U.S. Department of Labor, nor does it mention the use of trade names, commercial products, or organizations imply endorsement by the U.S. government. So you'll see a lot of pictures of different products in this presentation. Doesn't mean the Department of Labor is endorsing or telling you to buy those products. The second disclaimer says this presentation is intended strictly for the educational purposes and benefit of AFSCME members. It is not intended to provide medical advice or diagnosis. All images were found on public websites or credited, or we purchased them. All right, so to the learning objectives for today's webinar. First of all, we're going to have you know some of the injury statistics related to safe patient handling. Recognize the limits of the body when lifting or moving patients. We'll define the term ergonomics. We're going to understand the role of administrative and work organization, risk factors that play in worker injury. And last but not least, we'll identify and control measures that lower the risk of injury and become familiar with patient handling equipment. All right, so let's start off with some of the injury statistics. Healthcare workers have some of the highest back injury rates of all workers. Low back pain is the second leading cause of people missing work in the United States, and healthcare workers have one of the highest rates of back injury in all industries in the U.S. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So in this chart, you can see some of the non-fatal injuries and illnesses that result in lost work days. And at the very top is orderlies. And what do orderlies do? They actually move patients in hospital settings. We have firefighters, and then the next one down is nursing assistants. Patrol officers, correctional officers, construction laborers, and at the bottom there, again, in the top 10, is personal care aides, which is very similar to what home health care workers do, and registered nurses. And again, the source is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and this is from the NPR program on healthcare worker injury. According to surveys by the Department of Labor's Bureau of Labor Statistics, there are more than 35,000 back and other injuries among nursing employees every year, severe enough that they have to miss work. Nursing assistants and orderlies each suffer roughly 3 times the rate of back and other musculoskeletal injuries as construction laborers. This is not a new problem. If you look here, and you can see in the picture it's very old, in the textbook, Nursing, Its Principles and Practice, back from 1898, it stated that a nurse has injured her back in moving a patient. So they recognized it way back then, and you can see in the picture here from how they were attempting to move a heavy patient in and out of a tub. We have an over-ceiling lift, and this is courtesy of the National Library of Medicine. Studies of university and government researchers began to show decades ago that the traditional way hospitals and nursing schools teach staff to move patients, bend your knees and keep your back straight using proper body mechanics, is ineffective in preventing injuries. Direct care is physically demanding. A healthcare worker manually lifts 1.8 tons per an 8-hour shift. That's the same weight as a mid-sized car. That is what your body is going through every day in lifting patients. Nurses spend about 20 to 30% of their time bent forward or with their trunk twisted, and this puts you at high risk for hurting your back. Why is manual patient handling so hazardous? Well, first, it's very physically demanding, but on top of that, we often find ourselves with poor equipment design, poor facility design, poor work practices, and individual characteristics. That includes things like the worker's age, past injuries and illnesses, and physical conditioning. For clients, these factors can include their cognitive abilities. How much can they actually help with the lift? What are their motor skills and strengths? Did they suffer a stroke and this causes difficulty for them to move? How old is the client? And what injuries has the client has? Are those injuries so severe that they cannot assist in lifts or in movement? So this is a neat little chart here. Cumulative traumas cause musculoskeletal injuries. The slide illustrates how recurring stress from overexertion and repetitive motions can hurt the body. It begins with irritated tissue. If the irritation continues, small tears in the tissue called microtrauma occur. The body's reaction is to form scar tissue. The scar tissue develops adhesions over time. This tissue isn't as flexible or as strong as the original tissue, leaving it more prone to injury. The cycle continues until the repeated stress stops or until disability occurs. All right, so we're going to do our first check on learning. These are true and false questions. Question number 1, have you or someone you may know been injured due to patient lifting or transferring? Yes or no? All right, so about a third of you say yes, that either you've been hurt or someone you know has been hurt. Question number 2, nursing has some of the highest back injury rates. Is that true or false? That's great. Everyone got that right. The answer is true. All right, we're going to go on to what we call biomechanics and injury. So our body is a system of levers, and in some cases works just like a seesaw. So the effort and the load, and depending where the pivot mark is, depends on how much strength is going to be required. So let's look at your back as a lever. When we extend our arms to lift, it puts extra force on the vertebrae, discs, and muscles in the lower back. So again, the further away, even if it's a very light load, the more stress is in that critical area. And in many times when we're trying to move a client, we find ourselves stretching out like that. To lift safer, you want to bring things closer to your body. The closer the lift is, the less stress on that lower back injury force that could cause injury. So most of us have heard about, use your legs, not your back. And safe lifting is important. But ergonomics is much more than just lifting safely. Lifting safety is just one component of the total pictures. Boxes and materials don't wiggle or squirm like people do. So the techniques that may assist when moving materials is not sufficient when moving patients or clients. So some other risk factors. Administrative risk factors include poor training or sometimes no training at all, no rest periods, short-staffed, one person assigned to do a multi-person job. This is very common in home health care. No incident investigation to try to identify the risks or control the hazards. Poor repair process. It takes too long to repair equipment you need, so you have to use what is there, even if it's broken. Or missing equipment. There's no safe lifting equipment available at all. These are all risk factors that can lead to injury. Poor work organization. Let's take a look at this worker. We can see the awkward bend trying to lift this client. A patient-safe lifting device is needed here. So part of this is communication, talking to the person, the work practices themselves, the lack of supervision, or again, in this case, there was no equipment being used to help lift this client. And you can see by the bend and the force how far forward she has to bend to lift this person. Continuing with this, let's review these two quick pictures here. The one on the left, we see a healthcare provider trying to take a blood pressure. What problems do we see? And you can type your answers in the chat section if you'd like. So you can see she's twisting her body and not facing the work. It leads to injury. She's got her arm extended, but she has to twist her head to look at the blood pressure machine. So is there a way we could make this easier for this worker? And again, you can put your answers in your chat if you have any ideas. For example, we can rearrange the equipment, in particular the where she's doing the readout, so that awkward stretch isn't needed to complete the task. It may be possible also that she could take the blood pressure on the other arm or actually move the entire apparatus to the other side. Now let's look at the picture on the right. I think we can all relate to this picture, trying to move a furniture or other items only to realize they don't fit through the door. So this is job pre-planning, ensuring that we don't find ourselves in this type of situation, that what we have to move through, we can actually get through that space. All right, so we have a couple more check-on learnings. Administrative risk factors include poor training, no rest periods, short staffing, or all of the above. Everyone got that right, all of the above. Great. All right, so we're going to talk about ergonomics. Ergonomics is fixing the workplace to help prevent injuries to the worker. It is the study of how to design work and equipment so that people do not get injuries or musculoskeletal disorders. We fit the job and the workplace to the worker's needs, but in healthcare, this helps patients too. If we make the workplace safer for the worker using ergonomic strategies, those solutions often help the clients we serve. So ergonomics is all about avoiding injury. We look at equipment design so that it's comfortable, different size people can use it safely, and it feels easy to use. No one's going to use something that's difficult. Ergonomics is also about planning. We look at job organization, so that includes plans for safety, avoiding injury because of job design. We call this prevention through design, or PTD. And I'll refer back to those pictures we saw. All right, so a good example of this is prevention of bed sores. These are also called pressure sores or ulcers. These sores develop when joints or bones are pressed against delicate tissues over a long period of time. Pressure sores can become infected and lead to sepsis or even gangrene. To prevent bed sores or pressure sores, there's a couple of strategies we can use. Healthcare providers must change position in bed approximately every 2 hours or every hour while seated in a chair. Patients have to lie at a 30-degree angle at least part of the time to prevent that trough in the middle of the bed. Both of these strategies can let a lot of strain on the healthcare provider because they have to move the client so often. So some of the things we can do is use pillows, air mattress systems or egg crate style mattresses, to help prevent those pressure points. In order to avoid dragging the client over the sheets, we can use friction-reducing sheets. This also makes it easier to position the person in bed or in a chair. We can avoid using harsh products to cleanse the skin. We call the substitution. It's also safer for the workers. And lastly, we can encourage exercises so that the clients can assist more and are not as dependent on the healthcare provider to change positions. So again, when we're using the sheet is a friction-reducing sheet. All right, so one technique we can use is patient-assisted therapy. This requires that the client have some muscle ability to push, but you brace the patient's feet so he or she can assist in the move. But underneath that client is a friction-reducing sheet. So when they push up, they slide right up. All right, so we have some videos.
A Patran has been inserted under the pad or draw sheet that the patient is lying on. If possible, bend the patient's knee and tilt it in the direction he will be turned. One caregiver pushes on the patient's hip and shoulder to move him toward the center of the bed, while the other uses the linen to turn him. Remove the Patran, stabilize the patient with pillows, and put the rail up. The female caregiver is gently pushing and tipping the patient back, while the male caregiver pulls on the pad or draw sheet to turn the patient on his back and center him.
All right, so and that Patran can also be used with one person, and we'll show video with that as well. So those are called slide sheets or friction-reducing sheets, and they're some of the most common things that you see as far as controls. They can be disposable or reusable. The one you saw in the video is a disposable. You can also use what we call a slide board or a transfer board. The one in the picture here is called a Beezy board, and it actually has a disc where that slides in the groove. But many of them are just boards, and it does take a little bit of technique, but you can move the client from wheelchair to chair, from bed to wheelchair, using the transfer board. We also have tub assists. This helps keep the client up in the tub so they don't slide in and into the water. With electric control, you can actually move the person up and back to assist with bathing as well. And that last picture is a turn disc. The turn disc is a really handy tool. This one is showing how you can use it in a car to help get the person in and out of the car, but you can use this to actually turn the person in all kinds of ways on the floor. So the turn disc is a simple, easy to use, just that it can be used to just turn people, and it's not expensive, and with just a little bit of practice is a real easy control. This is an engineering control. This is a home version of a sit-to-stand aid for toileting, sitting, standing. Again, this one is designed for home use. The ones that nursing home and hospitals have them as well, obviously. So they sit-to-stand. You can bring the person up and down, help them toilet. In addition, you can also get a raised toilet seat to make it even easier to get on and off of the toilet. A sit-to-stand lift will assist the client in getting to a prone position, allowing the worker not to put themselves at risk. And again, as long as they have a little bit of strength in their legs and their arms, this is a great device to use. Another video next up showing how getting a patient out of bed using a friction-reducing sheet.
Sometimes there is only one caregiver to turn the patient. Follow NIOSH and your facility's guidelines. The patient is on a pad or draw sheet. The Patran is inserted under the pad from the patient's hips to heels. Raise the head of the bed. Move the Patran back about 6 inches from the edge of the bed. Support the patient's back while pulling his feet off the bed. Make sure to pull the patron back away from the patient's legs. If the patron is under the patient's heels, there's no need to lift legs. If the patient starts to slide out of bed, the caregiver can block the patient with his leg.
So important tips with this video. First of all, when you have a friction-reducing sheet and you're moving, you do have to keep that friction-reducing sheet away from the edge of the bed, or the patient could literally slip zoop, right out of bed. I've actually seen that happen. So you want to have about 6 inches away from the edge of the bed. You do not need a lot of force to move those legs around. The sheet will turn very quickly. And then if the person needs a little extra help, you can use a transfer board to a wheelchair. You can use a gait belt if they are going to be walking on their own to get them to their walker. But you can use other assistive devices once they're in that position where they're ready to get out of bed. And the next picture shows here one of the types of gait belts. There's many different kinds of gait belts. This is preferable than having a client putting their hands around the caregiver's neck, which is an easy way to get hurt. Gait belts are used to steady a client, not lift them. It helps provide balance for someone who becomes unsteady or just needs a little extra security. They can also be used to assist in toileting, helps them, with steadiness getting on and off the toilet. Just a note here in this picture, rocking chairs can be dangerous to the patient and provider. The rocking chair can suddenly go back and pull the caregiver back. I just wanted to mention that because of the picture. We're not necessarily advising using this in a rocking chair. All right, so a couple more check on learnings. First question, using proper technique is all that is needed to avoid injury. Is that true or false? Okay, so the answer is false. We also have working conditions, communications, and safe lifting devices are all things that can help avoid injury. Second question, using friction-reducing sheets benefits both the client and the caregiver. Is that true or false? And that answer is true. All right. So the next couple of slides talks about your rights under the law. So if you work for a facility and you're in a state and you're not an independent contractor, you are covered by the General Duty Clause. Every worker is entitled to a safe and healthy work environment free from recognized hazards, and lifting clients, ergonomic hazards are recognized hazards. You cannot be punished or discriminated against for using your OSHA rights. So the first statement is called the General Duty Clause, although it's paraphrased. OSHA doesn't have standards for safe lifting devices or safe patient handling, although some states do. But risk due to handling clients or patients is a recognized hazard. An employer cannot punish you for raising safety and health concerns. This includes firing or laying off, blacklisting, demoting or denying overtime, disciplining or denial of benefits, failure to hire or rehire, intimidation, harassment, making threats, or reassignment. If you feel that you've been discriminated against, you can actually file a whistleblower complaint. And so the information on whistleblowers is at www.whistleblowers.gov/know your rights. Again, if you work for an agency or an employer of some kind, you can file an OSHA complaint. If you've tried to address the hazard with your employer and you feel that you are not getting the answers that you need, if you feel the employer has violated OSHA standards, and there's a couple of options. You can now file a complaint online. Written complaints that are signed by workers or their representatives are submitted to an OSHA area regional office that are more likely to get results for an on-site OSHA inspection. Complaints received online from workers in OSHA-approved state plan states will be forwarded to the appropriate state plan for response. So you actually go online, you fill out the complaint form, and you can submit it. You can also download this form and fill it out, and you can mail it or fax it to your OSHA regional or area office. Written complaints, again, signed by workers are more likely to get a response. Include your name, address, and telephone number so that you can be contacted for follow-up. You can actually telephone your OSHA regional area office and discuss your complaint, ask the questions, and determine if, in fact, you should be filing a complaint. If the emergency or hazard is life-threatening, call your local regional office or 1-800-321-OSHA. So this is the main office for OSHA here in DC, but you wouldn't actually, mail it here. Where you would mail your information or questions or concerns is you would actually click on that link right there and find your state, your contacts in your state. You go to www.osha.gov for more information where to find the location closest to you. You can also contact your AFSCME representative for assistance, and many times the representative can help you fill out a complaint or help determine if a complaint is warranted. So you don't ever have to do this alone. Hopefully you can get your things addressed before ever having to file a complaint. So in summary, healthcare workers have high rates of injury, and we saw that in the very beginning. Healthcare workers have some of the highest rates of all jobs. Moving patients is physically demanding work. Remember, it's like moving a car every day. Ergonomics strives to prevent injuries by looking at equipment design and work organization. And using safe patient handling equipment and proper techniques is good for both the caregiver and the client. And we have some resources here. The NPR series on nurses is really good, and so I hope you have a chance to click on that. The VA has been working on safe patient handling for decades, and they have some of the best research on what works and what doesn't work, especially for clients who are totally dependent. In New York, New York actually has a state law on safe patient handling now, and it was spearheaded by the No Lift Task Force, and so you can click on that and you get all kinds of great information and fact sheets. The New York State Department of Labor also has a video series on safe patient handling. They have longer videos than what you saw in today's webinar, if you'd like to take a look at those. And then OSHA has a safe patient handling, a whole section on it with information, fact sheets, all kinds of great stuff that you can download for free. And I encourage you to take a look at those links if you want additional information. So we'd like to acknowledge some of our help that we got for doing this presentation. And as you can see there, the New York Zero Lift Task Force was one of the folks that gave us a lot of information. Drexel University, the Veterans Health Affairs, Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Oregon Nurses Association, Oregon OSHA, Federal OSHA, California OSHA, Washington State OSHA, the Back Injury Resource for Nurses, the District 1199C Training and Upgrading Fund in Philadelphia, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, called NIOSH, the University of Oregon, the Labor Education Research Center, and Google Images. And I'd like to have a special thank you to Ellie Barbarash at District 1199C Training Upgrading Fund in Philadelphia for her willingness to share and provide information for this presentation. Many of the images that you saw were directly from Ellie, and couldn't have done this without her. So big thanks out to her. And that's it for today's presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to contact the AFSCME Research and Collective Bargaining Department. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have after this presentation. Just a quick note, the booklet, Caring for Yourself While Caring for Others, is a great booklet from NIOSH, specifically for home health care workers. I highly recommend it, and we use this in our training sessions that are live, and I really think that you would enjoy that.
And there's another webinar in the video archives.
Yeah, it's the Chemicals and Infection Control webinar we did a couple months ago.
Okay, so that's there, and that's also available in the Spanish version. So again, we just want to thank you for participating. We want to give a special thanks to our presenter for today, Ms. Diane Brown, and we hope that you all enjoyed this webinar.